No wild card needed. Alex Iala earns direct entry into Washington's star-studded WTA 500. 16 months ago, Alex Iala needed a wild card just to enter the Miami Open. She was 19 years old. She was ranked number 140 in the world. And despite years of promise, she was still fighting for access to the biggest tournaments in tennis. Now she is heading back to the United States under completely different circumstances. No wild card, no qualifying rounds, no special invitation. Her ranking has already secured her place in the main draw of Washington's loaded WTA 500 event. That may look like a small detail on an entry list. For Iala, it represents one of the biggest transformations of her career. In Miami, someone had to open the door for her. In Washington, her results have opened it on their own. And this time, there is far more evidence that she belongs. Since her Miami breakthrough, Iala has entered the top 50, reached her first WTA Tour final, won multiple WTA 125 titles, defeated elite opponents across different surfaces, and produced the deepest Grand Slam singles run ever achieved by a Filipina. At Wimbledon in 2026, she defeated defending champion Iga Swiatek on center court and reached the fourth round. She left London as a proven top 40 player and one of the most closely watched young names on the tour. That is why Washington feels different. Iala is not arriving as an unknown teenager hoping one tournament will change her life. She is arriving as someone the field already knows, someone opponents will study, someone fans now expect to see on the biggest courts. Miami introduced her to the tennis world. Everything since then has shown that she intends to stay. A wild card gives a player access that her ranking cannot yet provide. It can create an opportunity for a young prospect, a returning champion, or a player with strong local interest. Miami showed exactly why those opportunities matter. But direct entry carries a different meaning. It means the ranking is now strong enough to do the work. A tournament director does not have to decide whether the player deserves a place. The results have already made that decision. 4 years, Eala lived in the difficult space between potential and proof. Tennis insiders knew her name. She had won the US Open Junior Singles title. She had developed her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. She was already one of the most promising athletes produced by the Philippines. But professional tennis does not award ranking points for potential. It rewards victories. Before Miami, Iala was still trying to reach the tournaments where the biggest victories were possible. That is one of the hardest cycles in the sport. Higher-ranked players enter stronger events directly. Those events offer more ranking points, more prize money, and more chances to face elite opponents. Players outside the cutoff often have to survive qualifying before the main tournament even begins. They can travel across the world, spend days preparing, and play 2 or 3 elimination matches just to earn a place in the first round. Sometimes they reach the main draw already carrying physical and emotional fatigue. Sometimes they lose in qualifying and disappear before most fans even know they were there. Iala understood that pressure. At Wimbledon in 2024, she won 2 qualifying matches and came within 1 victory of the main draw. Lulu Sun stopped her in the final round. Iala had come close enough to see the opportunity, but close does not move a player up the rankings. Only results do. So she kept working. She kept traveling. She kept entering tournaments where every round carried consequences. There was no guarantee that 1 week would suddenly change everything. Then Miami happened. Iala entered the 2025 Miami Open as a wild card ranked number 140. Most casual fans were focused on the established stars. Iala was expected to gain experience. Instead, she became the story of the tournament. She defeated Jelena Ostapenko, a former Grand Slam champion with enough power to overwhelm almost anyone. 1 upset could have been dismissed as a perfect day. Then I defeated Madison Keys, another Grand Slam champion, another dangerous hard-court opponent. Suddenly, this was no longer a young player enjoying one surprising afternoon. This was a serious run. Then came Iga. Sweet had the trophies, the ranking, the movement, and the discipline that made her one of the defining champions of her generation. Eala had almost nothing to lose, but she did not play like someone who was simply grateful to be there. She defended without panic. She attacked when the court opened. She absorbed Sweet's pressure and refused to let the name across the net change her decisions. Eala won in straight sets. In one tournament, a 19-year-old wildcard from the Philippines had defeated 3 Grand Slam champions and reached the semi-finals of a WTA 1000 event. The tennis world finally had to pay attention. But the most valuable reward was not the attention, it was the ranking. Eala climbed 65 places from number 140 to number 75. She became the first Filipina to enter the WTA Top 100. That number changed the structure of her career. Before Miami, her schedule often depended on qualifying rounds and special invitations. After Miami, more main draws became available. She gained the freedom to choose tournaments based on development instead of constantly fighting for access. She could prepare more carefully. She could recover between events. She could build a schedule instead of chasing one. But Miami also created a new question. Could she repeat that level once the element of surprise disappeared? Tennis history is filled with players who produced one unforgettable week and struggled to recreate it. The tour adjusts quickly. Opponents study patterns. Coaches identify weaknesses. After Miami, players knew what Eala could do. They understood how her left-handed game disrupted rhythm. They knew she could absorb pace, redirect the ball, and remain composed against major champions. She was no longer entering every match unnoticed. That made the next stage more difficult. Eala did not suddenly become unbeatable. There were tough losses, physical challenges, and matches where experienced opponents exposed areas she still needed to improve. That was normal. The important part was that she kept moving forward. At Eastbourne, she came through qualifying and reached her first WTA Tour singles final. She became the first player from the Philippines to reach a singles final at that level. Later, she won a WTA 125 title in Guadalajara. Her ranking continued to rise. She became the first Filipina to enter the top 50. Miami was beginning to look less like an isolated miracle and more like the start of something real. Then came the 2026 grass court season. Eala won another WTA 125 title in Birmingham. In Berlin, she faced world number 2 Elena Rybakina. Rybakina was a former Wimbledon champion with one of the most destructive serves in the sport. Eala defeated her in straight sets. One day later, she beat another top 10 opponent, Iga Swiatek, and advanced to the semi-finals. Those victories mattered because Eala was no longer winning while nobody was watching. The tour knew her name. The elite players understood the threat. She was still beating them. Then Wimbledon turned her rise into history. Eala entered the tournament as a seeded player. She won her opening match. She survived a difficult second round. Then she walked onto center court to face defending champion Iga Swiatek. It was a rematch of the victory that had changed her career in Miami. But almost everything else was different in Miami. Eala had been the unknown wild card. At Wimbledon, Swiatek knew exactly what she was facing. The crowd knew Eala's name. The tennis world understood that the first victory had not been an accident and the pressure was far greater. This was center court. This was a grand slam. This was the defending champion standing across the net. Eala still found a way. She survived an intense opening set. She saved set points. She stayed aggressive when the match became tight. Then she pulled away. Eala defeated Swiatek in straight sets and advanced to the fourth round. She became the first Filipina to reach the second week of a Grand Slam singles tournament. That victory changed the meaning of Washington. Without everything that happened after Miami, direct entry into a WTA 500 event might look like an administrative detail. Now it looks like proof. Proof that her ranking has caught up with her level. Proof that she has built more than one remarkable week. Proof that a player who once fought simply to enter major tournaments is now part of the attraction. Washington's field is filled with established stars, Grand Slam champions and players who have spent years competing on the biggest stages in the sport. Eala is not being placed beside them to create an emotional story. She is there because her ranking earned the position. That does not guarantee success. Direct entry does not make the draw easier. It does not protect her from a dangerous first-round opponent. It does not promise another deep run. Simply places her on the same starting line as the rest of the field. What happens after that will depend on her tennis, and that is where the challenge becomes more difficult. For most of her early career, Eala was trying to prove that she deserved access. Now she must prove that she can handle expectation. Those are two different forms of pressure. It is easier to swing freely when almost nobody expects you to win. It is harder when fans believe another major upset is possible every time you step onto the court. It is harder when opponents have studied your return position, your movement, and the patterns you prefer under pressure. It is harder when victories are no longer treated as miracles. That is the test waiting in Washington. Can I carry the confidence of Wimbledon onto a hard court? Can she recover physically and emotionally after the greatest Grand Slam run of her career? Can she stay aggressive when expectations begin to tighten her game? Can she turn historic victories into consistent weeks? Those questions are not signs of doubt. They are signs of progress. Nobody studies a player closely until she becomes dangerous. Nobody places expectations on someone who has not already shown that she can deliver. The conversation around Eala has changed. The question is no longer whether she is talented enough to compete at this level. The question is how high she can climb. Washington will also test her transition between surfaces. Grass rewards sharp reactions, quick points, low movement, and decisive attacking tennis. Hard courts create different demands. Rallies can become longer. Defensive movement becomes more important. Opponents have more time to attack a second serve. Physical recovery becomes a major factor during the North American summer, but Eala already knows she can succeed on hard courts. Miami was where everything changed. Washington gives her the chance to return to that surface as a completely different player. She is stronger. She is more experienced. She has faced more elite opponents. She has survived more pressure. She understands the difference between entering a tournament as a hopeful prospect and arriving as someone the field must respect. There is also a larger meaning behind her place in Washington. Eala is not only collecting opportunities for herself. She is changing what young athletes in the Philippines can imagine. For decades, the highest levels of global tennis have been dominated by countries with deep coaching systems, major tournaments, and generations of professional players. The Philippines has passionate sports fans and a history of producing world-class athletes, but it had never seen one of its women climb this high in professional tennis. Eala is building that path in real time. Every direct entry matters. Every seated appearance matters. Every victory over a major champion expands the limits of what once seemed possible. When she plays, fans in Manila follow every point. Filipino communities across the United States arrive with flags and turn sections of stadiums into something that feels like home. People who once knew little about WTA rankings now follow entry lists, tournament draws, and surface changes because they want to understand her journey. That connection cannot be manufactured. It happens when supporters believe they are watching history while it is still being written. But EA also deserves the freedom to keep developing. She is still only 21. She will lose matches. She will have difficult weeks. She will face opponents who expose parts of her game that still need work. Not every tournament can become Miami. Not every center court appearance can end with another historic victory. The next stage of her career will depend on how she responds when the emotions are lower, the crowd is smaller, and the match becomes a difficult early round battle. That is how stars are built. Not only through unforgettable upsets, through ordinary victories, through matches won when the tennis is not perfect, through recovery, consistency, and the ability to compete again after the excitement of a breakthrough has faded. Washington is not the finish line. It is another measurement. 16 months ago, Eala arrived at an American tournament ranked number 140 and dependent on a wild card. Now she returns to the United States as a direct entrant. A top 40 player, a Grand Slam second-week competitor, and one of the most closely watched young talents on the tour. She is not hoping her name will be added to the field. It is already there. She is not asking for permission to compete with the best. She has already defeated them. But professional tennis never allows a player to live on previous victories. Every tournament begins at 0. The opponents waiting in Washington will not care about the beauty of Eala's journey. They will attack her serve. They will pressure her second ball. They will force her to defend through long rallies. They will search for every weakness and make her prove herself again. That is not unfair. That is the privilege she spent years trying to earn. She wanted to face the best players in the biggest tournaments. Now she does. No wild card, no qualifying rounds, no favors. Just a place in the field and another chance to show what her tennis can become. Does Washington produce another breakthrough? Does Eala defeat another major champion? Does she build momentum toward the US Open? Or does she face the kind of difficult early loss that every rising player must learn to absorb? Nobody knows yet. That uncertainty is what makes the next chapter worth watching. Miami showed that Eala could enter the room. Berlin and Wimbledon showed that she belonged there. Now Washington will begin answering the hardest question of all. How far can she climb when she no longer needs anyone to open the door? Subscribe to follow every chapter of Eala's North American hard-court journey. Because entering the top 100 was historic, reaching the second week of Wimbledon changed expectations. But now that she no longer needs a wild card, the real test is about to